Now that you have HA Cloud installed, what now? So what we're going to do is use the MSS Administrative Console to configure host access for your users. First thing we have to do is log on to the admin console using the password that you used during the install. When you take a look at it, you're brought into the Manage Sessions pane. And this is where you can add sessions or session configurations that you want to distribute to your users or make available to your users. But first thing we're going to do is configure authorization. What we're going to do is allow authorization and access to our sessions using Active Directory. What I can do is click on my configure settings, go down to authorization and authentication, and select the LDAP tab. Now I've pre-configured an LDAP here, and we can just take a look and see what it looks like. We simply need to provide the DNS or IP address of the Active Directory server. In this case, I'm using Windows Active Directory. Provide a server that can read those attributes from the Active Directory and provide my search path for how I'm going to traverse the Active Directory to look for my users that are trying to access my sessions. Once I've provide that information, I can go ahead and do a test connection, and if I get a success, all is done correctly. So I'm going to use this setting. So I check this box, my configured LDAP, and hit apply. So now it's going to require all users who access HA Cloud to authenticate prior to being shown any sessions that they can launch. I can use this method to allow all users that can access the sessions, or if I want to limit what users can actually see individual sessions from my Active Directory. But for this demo, we're just going to use all of the users that will be can authenticate, can see my published session. So if I go back to Manage Sessions now, I can go ahead and add a session. And I'm going to add the host access for the cloud session. I'm going to call it Dallas. This is our host, internal host that we can connect to. And then once I hit launch, get prompted to select the host type that I want to configure. In this case, we're going to use the IBM 3270. Hit next, and then I'm presented with the connection configuration. And I provide the IP or DNS of the host that we want to connect to. In this case, dallas.attachmate.com. I'm going to use the open port 623 that's available for Open Telnet. And then I can also see different characteristics or protocols that I may want to use, TN3270, TN3270E, similar to what an emulator configuration would be. Other things that we can change are colors, mappings that you would want to distribute to your users, macros that you would want to use as administrative macros for startup, connection, or disconnect, give the ability to file transfer, copy-paste behavior, printing, if you want to add an associated print session with this session, and then user preferences. These are the rules that I want to users apply their settings. So they would be able to customize their display settings, maybe any color mapping. I would allow them to create any custom keyboard mappings that they'd want, and maybe control some file transfer if they need. And when I save this, I will be able to connect to a session. If you notice down here, status bar, that I'm connected. I'm ready to type in. Again, this is a administrative session. I can verify that I'm connected. I can go ahead and hit exit. And then what I want to do after, as an administrator, I created the session. I want to assign access. By default, I said all users will have access to this. And I simply need to check that box next to the session name that I want. And now any user that authenticates against my host access for the cloud server will be able to see and launch that session. So I can go ahead and apply, and it says my mappings were updated. And if you notice, I have no security sessions, and it's reminding me that I'm connected to this host on the open port. So now if I switch over to the host access for the cloud URL, this is the domain that I'm in. I'm going to provide my credentials. Once I log in, I'm going to see that session that's available to me. And once I click on that session, as a user, I'm going to see the same session that the administrator had created. I want to create individual preferences for how I like to interact with the session. So I may want to change my background color. My host screen, now I want to display that as blue. And maybe I'll change my cursor to crosshair because I have trouble seeing where the blinking box is. So if I save this, I'm going to see my cursor now show up as a crosshair, and it'll be my display will be default now with a cursor blinking and in the crosshair. So I have a definitive idea where my cursor is when I'm typing. And then as well as I changed the background green color to blue now. So these are my preferences. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect as a user, and I'll log off. So now I just got word from my system administrator that they're no longer going to allow open telnet to my host system, and they're shutting off that port 623, and they're going to require me to use SSL. So what I can do as an administrator, I can dynamically create this setting change so it can be available for all users who access this new Dallas session on a secure port. Now to do that, what I have to do is apply that host certificate to my MSS. This is going to be the certificate that's going to be the SSL certificate used by all of the clients that connect to. The administrator supplied me the certificate. So what I need to do is go into Administrative Console again, into the configure setting under trusted certificates, and I'm going to look for these terminal emulator client certificates that I want to use. So I'm going to click the upload and navigate to where I save that file on my local PC, and I'm going to upload that certificate. And then I'm going to give it a name that I know what it is. This name is just something that will be show up in the list, so I know as an administrator what it's associated with. So in this case, Micro Focus host, and here's the certificate definition. So once I've applied the certificate now, I can go back to my managed session and then launch the session again. It's still retaining the same IP address, but in this case, I want to change to the new TLS 1.2 port that the system administrator requires for TLS protocol. And then in my security, I'm going to go ahead and select the TLS 1.2 protocol. Now, if I save this, I'm establishing a connection again, but the only difference now is I see this plus sign down in the OIA area, and that indicates that I do now have a secure connection. So if I go ahead and exit this, I've saved this, and if I go and I can tell that it's secure now, it's changed my port to 823, so I know the port has changed, but it also indicates that this is now a TLS encrypted connection to the host. And to verify that as a user, I can come back to my HA Cloud and log in again as me. If I'm a user, I select the Dallas host that I want to connect, save my color preferences and my crosshair preferences, but now it indicates that I am now connected using the secure port. Making changes to a host session are pretty easy and manageable with the host access to the cloud and using MSS. Thank you.